The knock on my office door that Tuesday morning was loud, impatient. 15 years of interviewing suspects taught me to read attitude before people even spoke. This knock said, "I own this place." Nathaniel Carter walked in like he was serving a warrant. Expensive suit, designer shoes, attitude that cost more than my car. He didn't ask permission, didn't wait for invitation, just planted himself in front of my desk. Patterson, not detective, not mister, just my last name like I was some street punk he was booking. "We need to talk about your team's performance." I kept my voice level, professional. "Old habits. What specific concerns do you have?" He stayed standing. Classic intimidation move. I'd seen it from better criminals than this kid. "The Morrison team needs to go. They're dead weight." I glanced at my computer screen. Morrison's team had just closed our biggest Q3 deal, $4.2 million. Either this kid couldn't read financial reports, or this wasn't about performance. "Dead weight?" I asked. "They just landed our largest European contract." His jaw tightened. "I don't need to explain myself to you." Right there, I knew we had a problem. In financial crimes, that deflection meant the suspect was hiding something. But this wasn't some street criminal. This was the CEO's son. And I had a 17-year-old at home counting on me to keep this job stable until he figured out his future. "My name's Mike Patterson. I'm 45, spent 15 years as a detective with NYPD financial crimes before circumstances forced me into corporate life 5 years ago. The transition wasn't planned. My partner Tony got killed pursuing a suspect, and the department offered early retirement with full pension. Tommy was 12, still processing his mother leaving us 2 years earlier. I needed steady work, predictable hours, and a paycheck that wouldn't depend on whether some criminal decided to shoot back. Sterling and Associates wasn't my first choice. Hell, it wasn't even my third choice. But they needed someone who understood financial irregularities. And I needed a job that wouldn't give my son nightmares about whether Dad was coming home. Turned out I was good at it. Investigation skills translated well to due diligence. Reading people worked in client meetings. Building cases helped with contract negotiations. 5 years later, I'd built the international division from $8 million to $52 million in annual revenue. More importantly, it gave Tommy stability. Regular schedule, steady income, college fund growing instead of shrinking. The kid was looking at schools now, good schools. His grades could get him scholarships, but application fees alone were running us $1,500. Every month counted, which is why I'd been keeping my mouth shut about Nathaniel Carter for 3 months. Richard Carter, the CEO, had built Sterling over 20 years into something respectable. Good reputation, solid clients, people you could trust. When he announced his son would be joining as operations director, most of us figured the kid would shadow some departments, learn the business, maybe contribute something useful. We were wrong. Nathaniel got handed authority he hadn't earned over people who'd been building this company while he was figuring out his college major. And somehow in his 19-year-old mind, that meant I was supposed to take orders from him. At first, I tried to make it work. Corrected his mistakes quietly. Fixed his proposals before they reached clients. Covered when he missed deadlines or made promises we couldn't keep. Why? Because I needed this job, and because I thought he'd grow into the role. The problem started small. Nathaniel would show up to client meetings unprepared, interrupt presentations, contradict strategies that had taken months to develop. I'd spend evenings cleaning up confusion, apologizing to bewildered clients, rebuilding confidence he damaged in 20 minutes. My team started looking at me differently. Morrison, Williams, the whole international crew, these were experienced people who'd followed my lead for years. Now they're watching some teenager override their work, and I'm not saying anything about it. 3 weeks ago, it got worse. Nathaniel barged into our operations meeting, tossed a file on the table, and announced he was restructuring Morrison's team. "Too much dead weight," he said, looking around like he was addressing rookies. "We need fresh energy, new approaches." Morrison had been with Sterling 8 years. His team had just secured our biggest European partnership. Fresh energy wasn't the problem. "What's the basis for this decision?" I asked. Nathaniel's face flushed. "I don't need to explain myself to you." After the meeting, Morrison cornered me. "Mike, what's happening?" My performance reviews were excellent. We just closed the quarter's biggest deal. Looking at Morrison, good employee, 2 kids in high school, mortgage like the rest of us, I realized something. This wasn't about corporate politics or learning curves. This was about a spoiled kid playing power games with real people's lives. But I also realized something else. My phone had been buzzing all morning with reminders about Tommy's college application deadlines, SAT prep costs, campus visit expenses, the financial aid form sitting on my kitchen table that required steady employment verification. One wrong move, one political miscalculation, and Tommy's future gets smaller. That night, I sat at my kitchen table helping Tommy with his college essay while my mind worked the problem like an old case. Pattern recognition, evidence gathering, understanding the players and their motivations. "Dad, you seem distracted," Tommy said, looking up from his laptop. "Just thinking through some work stuff." "The new boss situation?" "Smart kid, always picked up more than I gave him credit for." Something like that. "You know what you always told me about bullies?" I looked at him. "What's that?" "You can't ignore them and hope they go away. Eventually, you have to stand up. This is more complicated than school bullies, son." "Is it though?" Sounds like the same thing, just with bigger consequences. I stared at this 17-year-old who somehow understood the situation better than I wanted to admit. Standing up to Nathaniel meant risking everything I'd built here. But letting him continue meant watching good people get destroyed by someone who'd never earned the right to make those decisions. That's when I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Case File N. Carter, time to do what I should have done 3 months ago. Building a case against the CEO's son wasn't something they taught in detective school. But 36 hours after Tommy's advice about standing up to bullies, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Nathaniel had started circulating a memo about performance optimization in international operations. Corporate speak for firing people. The first person I called was Leo Brennan in compliance. Leo and I had an understanding. He'd spent 12 years with the IRS chasing tax dodgers before joining Sterling. We both knew how to spot patterns that other people missed. "Got a minute?" I asked when he picked up. "For you, always. What's eating at you? Need a sanity check on something. Can you come by my office?" Leo showed up 20 minutes later, but instead of his usual easy smile, he looked troubled. "Mike, before you say anything, I need to tell you something. I've been documenting irregularities for weeks." That stopped me cold. "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that keep me awake at night." He sat down heavily. "Nathaniel's been pushing department heads to adjust numbers, skip verification procedures, rush approvals that should take weeks of review." I pulled up my own file on the computer. "Like this?" Leo reviewed the emails I'd been collecting, his expression getting darker. "Mike, this isn't just poor judgment. This is systematic abuse of position. And if I don't report it, I could lose my license." "Why haven't you?" "Because I know what happens to compliance officers who blow the whistle on executive families." He met my eyes. "Same reason you've been keeping quiet, I'm guessing." We sat there for a moment, two middle-aged guys with careers to protect, looking at evidence neither of us could ignore. "Leo, what if we didn't report it alone?" "What do you mean?" "What if we built something bulletproof first? Something the board couldn't dismiss or cover up?" Leo considered this. "You're talking about a coordinated presentation, multiple departments, independent verification. I'm talking about doing this right, like a real investigation. That's dangerous territory, Mike. If we're wrong, if this backfires, if we do nothing, how many good people lose their jobs? Morrison's got twin daughters heading to college. Williams just bought a house. These aren't numbers on a spreadsheet." Leo nodded slowly. "All right, but we do this by the book. Every piece of evidence documented, every claim verified. If we're going to take a shot at the king, we don't miss." My next call was to Sam Rodriguez in legal. Sam had been a prosecutor before joining Sterling, handled white-collar cases for the DA's office. But when I reached him, his response surprised me. "Mike, I can't be involved in this." "Why not?" "Because I've already been approached by Richard Carter about potential legal exposure from Nathaniel's decisions. I'm conflicted out." My stomach dropped. "Richard knows he knows enough to be worried. Asked me to review several contracts Nathaniel modified without authorization. Mike, some of these changes could void our liability protections." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that I recommended he get outside counsel." "Look, I can't help you build a case against Nathaniel, but I can tell you this. Document everything. If this goes to the board, they're going to want proof of specific damages, not just procedural violations." After Sam hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Richard knew his son was creating legal problems, but instead of stopping it, he was hiring lawyers to manage it. That told me everything about which way the wind was blowing. But I still needed an independent voice. Someone outside the company who could verify the business impact. Patricia Wells from Eastbridge Global had always been straight with me. 3 years of partnership, 40 million in contracts, mutual respect built on delivering what we promised. If anyone would give me honest feedback about Nathaniel's impact, it was Patricia. When her assistant put me through, Patricia's first words were, "Mike, please tell me you're calling with good news." "Depends on your definition of good news. Can we speak frankly?" "Always. How's your confidence level with our current operations?" There was a long pause. "Are we talking about the Carter boy?" "You know about the situation?" Mike, he called me last week demanding we renegotiate payment terms that took 6 months to establish. When I explained our position, he suggested we might want to reconsider our partnership entirely. I felt the ground shift under me. He threatened to terminate our contract? Not in so many words. But the implication was clear. Play by his rules or find another vendor. Patricia, I need to ask you something important. Off the record. How much patience does Eastbridge have for this kind of instability? Honestly, we're already exploring alternatives. Mike, you've been an exceptional partner, but Eastbridge can't risk our reputation on amateur hour. If this continues past our next quarterly review, we'll have to make some difficult decisions. When's the quarterly review? 6 weeks. After Patricia hung up, I sat in my car in the company parking lot, going through everything I'd learned. Leo had compliance violations, but was scared to act alone. Sam was conflicted out, but confirmed legal exposure. Patricia was actively looking for alternatives to our partnership. The case was building itself, but time was running out. 6 weeks until our biggest client walked away. However many days until Nathaniel decided Morrison's team was too much trouble to keep around. I called Tommy on my way home. He was at basketball practice, but picked up during break. Hey, Dad, how was work? Complicated. How'd practice go? Good. Coach says scouts from state might come to our next game. That's fantastic, son. Yeah, but Dad, I've been thinking about what we talked about last night. About standing up to bullies. What about it? I know you're worried about the job, about college money and stuff. But Dad, if you don't do what's right because you're scared, what does that teach me? I pulled into our driveway and sat there with the engine running. It teaches you that sometimes adults make compromises. Or it teaches me that fear matters more than doing right. Smart kid, too smart sometimes. Tommy, this isn't just about standing up to one person. This could affect a lot of people's lives. Including ours? Yeah, including ours. Then shouldn't we trust that doing the right thing works out better than doing the wrong thing? That night, I spread the evidence across my kitchen table while Tommy worked on homework. Every email, every violation, every client concern. The pattern was clear, the damage was documented, the timeline was irrefutable. But I also had a stack of college brochures next to my laptop. Application deadlines coming up fast. Campus visit schedules to coordinate. A future that depended on steady income and stable employment. Dad? Tommy looked up from his calculus homework. You know what the hardest part about courage is? What's that? It only works if you use it before you know how things turn out. I looked at this 17-year-old who somehow understood something I'd been struggling with for weeks. Building a case was one thing. Having the guts to present it was another. But Morrison had kids too. So did Williams and the rest of my team. They were counting on me to protect what we'd built. Time to stop building the case and start building the coalition. The confrontation I'd been dreading came 2 weeks later, but not the way I expected. Instead of Nathaniel storming into my office, it was Richard Carter who showed up at 7:30 in the morning, looking like he hadn't slept. Mike, we need to talk. My office now. I followed him down the hall, noting how other employees looked away when we passed. Word travels fast in office buildings, and the tension between the Carter family and my division had become impossible to hide. Richard closed his door and turned to face me. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely conflicted. Mike, I'm going to be straight with you. I know there are issues with Nathaniel's management approach. Issues? I kept my voice neutral. Richard, your son threatened to terminate our biggest client relationship because they wouldn't renegotiate terms that took 6 months to establish. Richard flinched. I've spoken to Patricia. She's concerned about continuity. She's concerned about working with amateurs. There's a difference. Look, I know Nathaniel needs coaching, but he's family, Mike, and he's the future of this company. What if the company doesn't have a future if this continues? Richard sat down heavily behind his desk. What do you want me to do? He's my son. I want you to remove him from operational authority until he's ready for it. Give him a development role, let him learn the business properly. I can't do that. Why not? Because... Richard paused, looking older than his 60 years. Because his mother thinks this company is his birthright. Because he's told his friends at college about his position. Because admitting I made a mistake means admitting I put family ahead of business judgment. For a moment, I saw Richard Carter not as the CEO, but as a father trapped between love for his son and responsibility to his company. It almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. Richard, I've been documenting compliance violations for 2 months. Leo's been doing the same. We've got legal exposure that could trigger federal investigations. How do you think that's going to look to your board? Richard's face went pale. You've been building a case against my son? I've been protecting this company from decisions that could destroy it. Mike, I'm asking you, As someone who's been loyal to Sterling for 5 years, give me time to handle this internally. Family to family, father to son. I thought about Tommy's words. Courage only works if you use it before you know how things turn out. How much time? A month? Maybe 2. We don't have 2 months. Patricia's quarterly review is in 4 weeks. If Nathaniel's still making operational decisions, they're gone. 40 million in annual business, Richard. I understand the stakes. Do you? Because 3 other clients have expressed similar concerns. We're not talking about one contract. We're talking about the foundation of our international division. Richard stood up, paced to his window. What if I suspend you temporarily? Just to calm things down, show that I'm taking action. I stared at him. You want to suspend me for doing my job? It's not permanent, just until I can work things out with Nathaniel. And what happens to my team while I'm gone? What happens to client relationships I've spent years building? Nathaniel can handle the day-to-day operations. Richard, that's like putting an arsonist in charge of the fire department. His face hardened. That's my son you're talking about. And these are good people's livelihoods you're gambling with. We stood there for a long moment, 2 men on opposite sides of an impossible situation. Finally, Richard returned to his desk. Mike, I'm sorry, but I have to suspend you. Effective immediately. For what? Insubordination. Undermining executive authority. Creating a hostile work environment. I almost laughed. Creating a hostile work environment? Your son threatened to fire an entire team because they questioned his judgment. That's his version of events. Nathaniel says you've been sabotaging his initiatives, contradicting his decisions in front of clients. And you believe him? Richard couldn't meet my eyes. I have to support my family. I walked out of Richard's office knowing exactly what came next. But I was also realizing something important. I wasn't as alone as I thought. That afternoon, while I was clearing out my desk, Morrison approached me. Mike, this is wrong. Everyone knows it. It's politics, Morrison. Nothing you can do about it. Maybe not individually, but what if it wasn't individual? I looked up from packing my files. What do you mean? The team's been talking. Williams, Rodriguez, the whole international group. We're thinking about requesting a meeting with the board ourselves. Morrison, that's career suicide. Is it? Or is watching you get thrown under the bus for protecting us career suicide? Before I could respond, Leo appeared in my doorway. Mike, we need to talk. Privately. We walked to the parking garage where Leo handed me a manila envelope. What's this? My resignation letter. Effective end of business today. Leo, you can't quit. You've got 3 years until retirement. I can't stay and watch what's happening here. Mike, I've been a compliance officer for 15 years. I've never seen violations this systematic get ignored by senior leadership. So what are you going to do? Same thing you should do. File an independent report with the board. Tonight, Leo, they'll destroy us. They're already destroying us. Richard just suspended the best division head in the company to protect his son's feelings. How much worse can it get? That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with 2 envelopes. One contained my resignation letter. The other contained everything. 2 months of documentation, compliance violations, client concerns, legal exposure assessments. Tommy was doing homework across from me, occasionally glancing at the paperwork. Dad, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you going to quit? I'm thinking about it. What would Mom say? I looked at my son, surprised by the question. What do you think she'd say? She'd say you never backed down from anything important when you were a cop. And she'd ask why you're starting now. This is different, Tommy. More complicated. Is it? You told me once that being a detective meant protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Isn't that what you're doing now? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Patricia Wells. Mike, I just heard about your suspension. This is unacceptable. Patricia, I appreciate the support, but there's nothing you can do. Actually, there is. I've scheduled a call with Richard tomorrow morning. Eastbridge is formally requesting your reinstatement as a condition of contract renewal. That's going to make things worse for everyone. Mike, do you think we're the only client who feels this way? Harrison Industries called me this afternoon. So did Nordic Partners. We're all seeing the same problems. After she hung up, I looked at Tommy. Sometimes doing the right thing gets complicated. Dad, remember what you used to tell me when I was scared about something? What's that? The right thing is still the right thing, even when it's hard. I sealed the envelope with the evidence and stood up. Where are you going? To deliver something to the board of directors. Tonight. Before I lose my nerve, Tommy smiled. I'm proud of you, Dad. Ask me tomorrow if you still feel that way. The boardroom felt different at 7 in the morning. 12 directors around a polished table, but the atmosphere was tense, divided. Half were looking at me with curiosity, half with barely concealed hostility. Richard sat at the far end, avoiding eye contact. Chairman William Burke spoke first. Detective Patterson, thank you for coming. Before we proceed, I should mention that Mr. Nathaniel Carter has also requested to address the board. My stomach dropped. I'd expected to present evidence, answer questions, maybe face some skepticism. I hadn't expected a direct confrontation. We'll hear from you first, Burke continued. Then Mr. Carter will have an opportunity to respond. I opened my laptop, knowing this was my one shot. Gentlemen, I've prepared a comprehensive review of systematic compliance violations in our international operations over the past 90 days. I walked them through everything methodically: chronological evidence, financial impact, client correspondence. But I could feel the room's energy shift when I mentioned specific dollar amounts. $43 million in annual revenue at risk, federal compliance exposure, legal liability. Detective Patterson, interrupted board member Victoria Hayes, these are serious allegations. But we're also hearing that this represents a personal conflict with executive authority. Ma'am, I'd direct your attention to the client correspondence. Patricia Wells, Harrison Industries, Nordic Partners. 4 major clients expressing identical concerns about operational competence. These aren't personal grievances. Burke nodded. And your recommendation? Immediate operational review with clear separation between family relationships and business decisions. These violations could trigger regulatory investigations that would damage Sterling's reputation permanently. Thank you. We'll now hear from Mr. Carter. Nathaniel walked in like he owned the building. Expensive suit, confident stride, but I caught something in his eyes I recognized from interrogations, the overconfidence of someone who's never been seriously challenged. Gentlemen, he began, what you're seeing here is a disgruntled employee who can't accept modern leadership approaches. Detective Patterson represents old-school thinking that's holding Sterling back. He had slides prepared, performance metrics, efficiency improvements, modernization initiatives, impressive presentation for a 19-year-old. But I'd seen enough criminal defendants testify to recognize when someone was overselling. The international division has grown under my oversight, Nathaniel continued. These so-called violations are actually innovations that streamlined outdated procedures. Board member Charles Morrison, no relation to our Morrison, leaned forward. Mr. Carter, can you address the specific client concerns raised in Detective Patterson's presentation? Nathaniel's confidence flickered for just a moment. Those clients are resistant to change. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions to move a company forward, even if those decisions cost us $40 million in annual revenue. Temporary setbacks. The market will adjust. I watched the board's faces during this exchange. Nathaniel was losing them with every answer, but he couldn't see it. Classic narcissist mistake, believing your own narrative even when the evidence contradicts it. Burke called for a brief recess. The board filed out, leaving Nathaniel and me alone in the room. You think you're pretty smart, he said, dropping the professional facade. But you have no idea who you're dealing with. My family built this company. Your father built this company. You're just trying to inherit it. Same thing. No, it's not. Your father earned respect through competence. You're demanding it through entitlement. His face flushed. When this is over, you'll never work in this industry again. Maybe, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. When the board returned, Burke's expression was unreadable. After deliberation, we've reached several decisions. First, Mr. Nathaniel Carter's resignation has been accepted, effective immediately. Nathaniel's face went white. What? You can't do this. Second, Mr. Richard Carter will take a 90-day leave of absence while we conduct a full operational review. I glanced at Richard. He looked devastated but unsurprised. Third, Detective Patterson, we're offering you the position of Executive Vice President of International Operations, with full authority to restructure and rebuild client relationships. The room spun slightly. Executive Vice President? Effective immediately, with a mandate to implement new governance protocols preventing future violations. Nathaniel stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're destroying this company over some paperwork technicalities. Burke's voice turned cold. Mr. Carter, we're protecting this company from decisions that could have triggered federal investigations. Security will escort you out. After Nathaniel left, Burke turned to me. Detective, we have conditions. Full operational independence, but monthly board reviews for the first year. Can you accept that? Yes, sir. Then welcome to the executive team. That afternoon, I called Tommy from my new office. Bigger, better view, but somehow the victory felt smaller than I'd expected. Dad, that's incredible. Executive Vice President? Tommy, I need to tell you something. This isn't going to be easy. We made some powerful enemies today, but you did the right thing. Yeah, but doing the right thing doesn't guarantee everything works out perfectly. Dad, remember what you told me about being a detective? Sometimes you catch the criminal, but you can't undo all the damage they caused. Smart kid, what's your point? Maybe success isn't about perfect endings. Maybe it's about stopping the damage before it gets worse. 3 months later, Patricia Wells flew in from London to sign our contract extension. We were sitting in my office, finalizing terms that would keep Eastbridge with Sterling for another 3 years. Mike, can I ask you something personal? Sure, was it worth it? The risk, the uncertainty, the potential cost to your family? I thought about that. Richard had returned from his leave of absence as chairman emeritus, diminished but not destroyed. Nathaniel was somewhere in Singapore, learning international markets under strict supervision. The company was stabilizing, but trust took time to rebuild. Ask me in a year, I said. But I can tell you this. My son learned something important about standing up for what matters. That might be worth more than any promotion. Patricia smiled. And the rest of your team? Morrison's daughters both got into college. Williams closed his biggest deal last month. Leo came back as chief compliance officer with expanded authority. So the good guys won? The good guys survived. In corporate life, sometimes that's the same thing. That evening, I helped Tommy with his college applications. Scholarship offers were coming in, his grades were solid, and for the first time in months, I wasn't worried about paying for his future. Dad, you know what the best part of this whole thing is? What's that? You didn't just tell me about doing the right thing. You showed me what it costs and why it's worth it anyway. I looked at this kid who'd somehow become wiser than his father and realized something important. Success wasn't about perfect endings or easy victories. It was about building something worth protecting and having the courage to protect it when the time came. Sometimes that's enough.